Well, we are a year away from the country's fifth general elections. After 19 years, South Africa is still considered a new democracy by some. Politically, what changes have we made and failed to make throughout the period? Well, joining us now in studio to discuss this and more, political analyst Ebrahim Fakir. A very good morning to you. Thanks again for joining us. Going into the 2014 elections, what's the political landscape looking like at the moment? Is the ANC still looking set to lead until Jesus comes back?
Well, they're set to lead. I'm not convinced about the until Jesus comes back. There are obviously changing trends in our political landscape, and there are four which are primary changing ones. The first is that I think we must all accept that trust in political parties, trust and confidence in political parties among citizens is in fact quite low. It hovers at around 18%, and this is for all political parties across the board, not just the governing party. So citizens' trust across the board in political parties is low. This is a universal phenomenon. It's not something specific to South Africa, but it's something we should bother about. Of course, we're slightly higher in trust levels compared to perhaps Europe and elsewhere, where there's much lower trust. I think they're in like single-digit figures. At least we're in double-digit figures. That's the first. The second is I think we must also look at the fact that we've got changing trends within political parties themselves. On the one hand, you know, just immediately after our transition, we had very high levels of political violence between political parties. That trend changed around 1998. There was settlement, there wasn't great violence, there wasn't great degrees of violence, political intolerance had come down. But I think since about 2005, 2006, we found a trend where there was a shift in the sense that it wasn't just conflict between political parties, but increasing conflict within political parties. And the DA is not immune from this, because as they've amassed a greater amount of power, got a greater amount of supporters, some of this kind of infighting, the kind of political tensions, the kind of political competition and conflict has been settled within the DA as well. Of course, we've seen this happening within the ANC. I mean, a policy battle, a battle for the ideological soul of the party, a battle for the policy trajectory, and in fact, quite often, a battle for the very identity of what the party is in fact. And so that's the second trend. The third is that the site of politics has changed. It's not just politics between parties anymore. Increasingly over the last decade, you'll find increasing citizen protests, people coming out in the streets, in communities, boycotts. That happens amongst poor black communities, but middle class communities across race are engaging things like rates boycotts, tax boycotts. And so the site of politics has now shifted slightly in that it's away from mere political parties, but also increasingly we find the springing up of new parties. COPE, not too long ago, Mampela Rampela's Gang coming up again, registration of several new parties at the IEC, not many of them I think which are going to make a dent in the political firmament, but they're there. And then fourthly, trust in institutions. I think those are important because it's not just about political parties, it's also about how citizens relate to the state and institutions of government. And there you find that there are perceptions which hover. You know, they increase shortly after a person is elected within a political party or shortly after an election, and then it starts dipping, and coming closer to an election, you know, it hovers much more widely. So we've got shifting patterns in our politics. Party support patterns among citizens is also beginning to shift. And then the fifth is rates of participation. You know, insofar as we're saying that South Africans are engaged, South Africans are aware, they're very interested in what happens politically and how it affects their lives. But they don't always participate merely through political parties, through formal channels, through institutions. They also take to the streets. So the outer campaign against e-tolling, citizen protest, as I've been saying, in communities over service delivery or about the accountability of local councillors. So this stuff is shifting and changing all the time.
Mr. Fakir, this is why I enjoy having you here. You've just about answered all the questions that I had for you this morning. Very informative. Your analysis of the political landscape, very riveting. And of course, we'll have you as we continue to take a look at the 2014 elections going forward. Thanks again for your time answering everything that we needed to know here on Morning News today. Political analyst Ebrahim Fakir.
News that moves. eNCA.com.